Okay, we've got some stuff to talk about. This Friday on SideQuest, we are covering Audra Winter. She's a BookTok influencer with 100,000 plus followers and millions of views, and she primarily posts about her author journey to publish The Age of Scorpius, which is her debut novel. These videos of hers, they got pretty popular in the algorithm, popular enough that she sold thousands of pre-order copies. And for a debut, a young debut, 22 years old, that's impressive. Only thing that wasn't impressive was the book itself. It was not received well by many, many fans, especially given the price point that the book was released at. Would have been a DNF, but I made myself finish it because I wanted to give it an honest shot. To say it was poorly written, poorly developed, and poorly edited would be an understatement. She even misspelled her own made-up words. The characters are irksome. This is why when someone tells you your book isn't ready, you don't dismiss it because it's not something you want to hear. Age of Scorpius reads like it was written by a 12-year-old. 10 rewrites or 25, this author's writing never developed beyond the skill of a child. I'm baffled. It may have had plenty of pretty art, but it did not have a lot of good writing. Now, my episode on Audra Winter is mostly going to cover Audra Winter, like the author, because her whole weird Elizabeth Holmes-esque CEO personality, it's a whole topic in itself. The defensive way she responds to criticism, the guilt-trippy way she tries to get her viewers to support her book, it's all very icky and worthy of critical failure.
I actually had to go back to Kansas because I was becoming so unhealthy. I wasn't eating, and quite honestly, I'm still not. I had to go back to my parents because they were concerned about me. Everybody else was concerned about me because everybody in my personal circle knows that this is like everything to me.
But my hands are so full with that little video essay that I don't have enough time in that video to cover the book itself. So today on Crispy Commentary, we're making a little addendum. We are going to be covering The Age of Scorpius. I'm going to be reviewing the book, all the problems with the book, and seeing if there's any lessons that we can learn as aspiring authors and game masters at our TTRPG tables. Because we all build fantasy worlds here. Let's try to do it a little bit better than Audra Winter. Without further ado, guys, let's get started. Okay, so the premise of The Age of Scorpius, it's spelled out through the summary on the back of the book, and I do want to note, on my PDF copy of The Age of Scorpius, the summary opens not with like a summary of the story, but instead a summary of Audra Winter's TikTok successes, like her viewership metrics, her follower metrics, the tropes that the book falls under, like, just goes to show where this author's priorities are, especially since those are shown before the plot of the book itself. Wild. But anyway, the plot of the book. The Age of Scorpius, as the name maybe implies for some of you, is about the star signs, astrology. There are 4 unions, each representing 3 different star signs, and all of them exist on a world known as Guardian, spelled incorrectly. The big conflict of this book is Scorpio. They enforce some totalitarian rules on their population, and our main protagonist, her job is to stop them, to uncover the true history of the land around her and prove that Scorpio's rules, they're all a bunch of bunk. A pretty simple rebel against society, semi-dystopian teen fantasy thing, with the star signs tossed in. Look, I'm mocking the premise a bit, but seriously, the premise can work. It's tropey, yes. Derivative, yes. But so is like every story, and I think with good writing, this could be a really fun idea. The problems with it, though, they start like right on the first page. And I don't even mean like at the first chapter, I mean during the opening monologue. One thing that a lot of videos that cover the Age of Scorpius for some reason skip over is that, at least on my copy, there was an opening monologue that covers the general world building. We blurred the lines between humans and machines, and it burned Earth alive. It started with the angry oceans and the burning forests. Then came the earthquakes, eruptions, and extinctions. All we knew was lost in the destruction, but all we knew was formed on the central continent. Humanity, we're known for surviving, and survive we did. Clusters of humans from all corners of the world prevailed through the disasters. You mean persevere. With the fall of each homeland, we sought anew. The central continent welcomed us. We deemed it the guardian land for humanity. Guardian, spelled wrong. That's not the whole monologue, by the way. That's just the first paragraph of a multi-paragraph word salad. And I'm not trying to say that to be mean. I'm saying that because, genuinely speaking, it is kind of word salady. The great thing about the opening monologue of, like, Avatar: The Last Airbender, for example, is that it very succinctly delivers the information that the audience needs to know. This is a lot of overly flowery fluff that doesn't really help me as a reader to understand what's going on. Like, yes, because of this opening monologue, I know the names of the main factions, like Conviction, and what star signs comprise those factions, but as an astrology normie who doesn't really understand what these star signs mean, it's just a bunch of proper nouns thrown at me in the mix of all of these words conveying a world that I don't yet care about and that I don't really understand. It's just a rough opening monologue. The worst thing about it, though, is it fails to do the thing that the best opening monologues often do. I think Lord of the Rings, for example. Lord of the Rings doesn't really open with a monologue, but before the first page, we get the infamous One Ring to Rule Them All poem. With a few words, Tolkien established a lot of important elements of his universe, but the most important thing established in the One Ring to Rule Them All poem is the One Ring itself. We immediately understand the central MacGuffin and conflict of the story, the One Ring to rule them all, and the Dark Lord who wants to control it. Another great monologue that I brought up earlier, Avatar. She definitely seems to have based this monologue off something like the opening monologue of The Last Airbender. You know, you introduce the four nations and so on and so forth. But the most important part of Avatar's opening monologue is not the four nations or the world, it's the conflict. The most important part of that monologue is the Fire Nation attacking, and the Avatar, the person who was meant to defeat these kind of threats, the Avatar disappeared. Fire Nation attacked, they're the bad guys. Avatar disappeared, we need the Avatar. Immediately, this sets the stakes of the story. I understand what the point of all this is. The opening monologue of Age of Scorpius, it doesn't do any of that. It establishes that this world is faux post-apocalyptic, that machines destroyed the planet, and that humans had to all conglomerate on one central continent. They looked to the stars for answers, and that's why we're all based around the star signs now. Like, yeah, that's all cool, but, like, that's not really important. The central conflict of the story is about Scorpio, those guys, and their control over the people, their arbitrary rules, and needing to rebel against those rules. That is not at all what this opening monologue focuses on. Goodness gracious, it is a mess. And I haven't even started the first chapter, man. The first chapter. If you know anything about the Audra Winter drama, I'm sure you've heard it a billion times, but let me just read it to you. Someone had rewritten the history of Conviction Woods, the cursed forest I called home, despite all the text describing Conviction Woods as eternally uninhabitable. There were hundreds of wartime artifacts scattered amongst the forest's grounds. The records had been altered to hide the truth of Guardian's last war, a truth that allowed the woods to protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundaries. I lingered on the edge of the farthest northern reach of Conviction Woods. Before me stood a crumbled and dilapidated stone arch, old runic etched across its surface, worn away by the structure returning to the earth. A few fallen stones lay across the ground, freezing into the dirt as ancient remnants conjoined with snow and soil. Beyond the arch's mouth lay Assiduous's barren territory. Assiduous's barren territory and its occupants who, Jesus Christ, oh my God, that sentence. The whole chapter is like that. I'm serious. Not just the whole chapter. Actually, screw it. No, the whole book is like that. Where do I even start, man? For starters, the nonsensical word choice. We got a little preview of that during our opening little monologue from before the chapter, but here, old runic. In English, runic is typically use as an adjective. You would be better off describing them as old runes, or just naming the language something original to this universe. It's not like you're afraid of using fancy proper nouns other places, like seriously, Conviction Woods, Assiduous is barren territory. I don't really know what any of these are. Like, I know that Conviction are one of the main factions and that Scorpio is a part of Conviction through the opening monologue, and I know that Scorpio are the bad guys in the story through the summary on the back of the book, but if I were just to read the first chapter, I would really have no idea who any of these people are, and you're throwing them at me so fast as a reader. Now, the solution to this problem is not to throw yet more exposition into this already extremely crowded first couple of paragraphs. The solution would be to expand the narrative to accommodate for all of this world building that we're doing here. You can't throw it all at me so fast. Instead, have the protagonist walk through the Conviction Woods before getting to the border. Therefore, we have some time to learn about the setting, and more importantly, connect with our protagonist, who, by the way, goes unnamed throughout the whole beginning part of the story. I barely know anything about her. Hell, I didn't even know it was a her until the random stormtroopers that show up call out that she's a girl. Giving us more time to connect with the protagonist and the setting would make the flow of this opening so much better. Look, I'm all for breakneck pace, but you can't combine breakneck pace with world building. Breakneck world building is going to really confuse your audience. Another huge problem with this opening chapter, and I didn't quite get to it because I only read the first couple paragraphs. I don't want to turn this into an audiobook reading, but later on down the line, like I said before, some stormtroopers show up, some assiduous soldiers. They want to turn in our protagonist for some bounty. Okay, we've got a situation on our hands. Immediate stakes. Awesome. Problem is, the tension of the scene is immediately undercut because not only does the protagonist say that the woods will protect her against any outsiders, but the stormtroopers, the idiot guard people, they also say that the woods are dangerous and will attack them if they enter. They also establish immediately that our protagonist, she is safe beyond the borders of the woods. The woods protect those mysteriously meant to survive beyond its boundaries. One of the sloppiest sentences I've ever read. But it establishes right there that our main protagonist, when she steps past the border of these super dangerous woods, she'll be fine. She'll be fine. There's no reason for me to be worried. Look, I'm not trying to say that the protagonist should get her ass beat by these stormtroopers right away. No, you can have her beat them using the defenses of the woods, just like she does in the book, but just be a little bit more clever about it. Instead of immediately telling the audience she's going to be safe, have her back up in fear, play out this damsel in distress scenario, back up into the woods. The soldiers hesitate to follow her. We don't know why yet, but they decide, screw it, she's right there, let's get her. They head into the woods. They follow the girl. She's backed up against the corner. She draws her blade and the soldiers smirk at her before the defense of the woods kick in and a wolf attacks them. Not only does the protagonist pull the rug out from underneath these stupid stormtroopers, but she also pulls out the rug from underneath me. As the reader, I thought she was in danger, but turns out she had control of the situation the whole time. See? That would make her so much more memorable. Instead, right away, I know she's safe, and there's no reason for me to be invested or interested at all. That also builds into a show don't tell problem, by the way, because yes, this book tells you a lot about everything. It is so afraid of leaving anything even a little bit vague or up for me to figure out, while at the same time being extremely confusing by throwing a bunch of terminology at me that I don't know. It's such a weird paradox. A book that's so obsessed with explaining things is really bad at explaining a ton of things. Okay, that, in my opinion, is a weak opening. We don't know much about our character, there's no tension, there's no stakes, the world is confusing. I feel like I'm stuck in a white room and not in an actual setting. The writing is weak, and most importantly, I don't care about the story. This is YA fantasy, though. A lot of people, when they talk about Age of Scorpius, for some reason they compare it to, like, adult novels, like A Song of Ice and Fire, or Stephen King's books. I'm instead going to look at some good young adult fantasy for our example of how to do this right. I didn't want to be a half-blood. If you're reading this because you think you might be one, my advice is close this book right now. Believe whatever lie your mom and dad told you about your birth and try to lead a normal life. Being a half-blood is dangerous. It's scary. Most of the time, it gets you killed in painful, nasty ways. If you're a normal kid, reading this because you think it's fiction, great. Read on. I envy you for being able to believe that none of this ever happened. But if you recognize yourself in these pages, if you feel something stirring inside, stop reading immediately. You might be one of us. And once you know that, it's only a matter of time before they sense it too. And they'll come for you. Don't say I didn't warn you. That, my friends, is the opening to Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I actually read less words there than I read for Age of Scorpius, but in that short little passage, Reardon does so much more legwork with his story. Immediately, I understand the stakes of the narrative. These protagonists, these half-bloods, they can die in horrible, painful ways. Okay, death is on the line. We also know what our protagonist is, a half-blood. Half-blood of what? We don't know yet, but it will be soon revealed in the story. The threat of something coming after the protagonist or coming after half-bloods is immediately followed up on as Percy is famously attacked by his pre-algebra teacher, who turns out to be an evil harpy set on killing him. Establish stakes, follow up on the stakes. Most importantly, I understand a ton about our protagonist. Percy is quippy. He's sassy. In the Percy Jackson series, in the books at least, the guy is a frickin' menace. And this is established within the first few sentences. What do I know about the protagonist of Age of Scorpius? I know she's researching something, she's determined, she's pretty fearless going out into Assiduous's barren territory. That's cool, but it's nothing that got me invested in her. And frankly, getting that done within the first few pages, that's a pretty damn important part of writing any sort of fiction, and Age of Scorpius is not doing that. We've only covered the first page. Not even the first page. I didn't even read the whole thing. We already tore apart so many problems with this book. And trust me, all the problems I just brought up, weird word choice, poor characterization, overuse of language that's not explained to the audience, this is present throughout the entire book. But just to cover some other general stuff, the dialogue is very, very clunky and definitely suffers from that aforementioned poor word choice. You look and smell like you jumped in a stagnant pond. You're lucky that Dad gave us the water in this house, and you're even more lucky that I'll let you shower first. Not a bad sentence, but like, a stagnant pond? Stagnant means a body of water that doesn't move. A pond, by its very definition, is stagnant. If you're trying to describe the pond as, like, stinky, there are other words from that. Stagnant is not one of them. What the hell, man? Another big thing that you got a little taste of when you were listening to that opening chapter, this author repeats herself, like, a lot. Not in the sense of repetition as a literary device, but more in the sense of she forgot what she wrote 5 seconds ago and is writing it again. Like Assiduous's barren territory being said twice in a row. That's the kind of mistake that might happen if you don't read your work back. And yeah, this work does not sound like it's been read back at all. She repeats herself constantly, and it makes everything she writes sound very, very unnatural, especially since a lot of the titles in this world are rather lengthy. Going back to dialogue, a bigger problem than just like word choice or repetition is the structure of the dialogue itself. She has this habit, I've never seen it before, even with equally bad authors. She has this habit of having a character refer to an action that hasn't yet been described to the reader, or refer to an object that I don't yet understand is in the room. It's almost like she's expecting me as the reader to be able to see the room myself, when obviously I can't. Everything that I understand about the area has to be described, and she often doesn't do that. And even when she does, it's out of order. Let me give you an example. They haven't yet. You look inviting. I nodded at her black clothing underneath her cloak and her blonde hair plastered across her glistening forehead. not horrible by any means, but it's unnatural, isn't it? They haven't yet. You look inviting. It's two separate lines that are just pasted together, and the thing that looks inviting hasn't yet been described to the reader. It's described after the dialogue instead of before. Let me just shuffle some things around. I'm not going to change anything about the words, just a little shuffle of the sentence, and see if this sounds better. They haven't yet. I then nodded at her black clothing underneath her cloak, and her blonde hair plastered across her glistening forehead. You look inviting. Not a masterpiece by any means, but it's an improvement. Now the reader understands what looks inviting. The description of the woman's outfit serves as the transition point. This is such a simple thing to edit, but it happens like all the time. It's what's really bothering me, and I don't hear anyone else talking about it. Like, it happens so much, man. There are so many other issues, but I'm gonna end on this one. Seriously, the use of terminology that the reader does not yet understand. Guys, it is freaking constant. This is a paragraph from the second chapter. The Ares leader was a big deal, and she was trying to act nonchalant about it. Atlas Fulbright was one of the two Arcturus leading Guardian's entire stellarium. He was perhaps the most influential governmental leader in Guardian, leading along with the other Arctura, the Scorpio leader. What? Look, I know I'm being a hater here. At the end of the day, this is a young adult author's debut novel. The main reason I'm being a hater is because of her behavior outside of the existence of the book, but I can't imagine anyone thought that this was ready to print. I mean, come on. After I write anything, I always read through it out loud, and I'm not trying to say I'm a great fiction author. I'm not, okay? Look, I've read my fiction. It has plenty of problems, but god dang. I firmly believe the author never went back to do a single revision, never went back and reread her own work, because if she did, there are so many mistakes that she could have caught. Silly, tiny, little edits that would have made the reading experience so much less cumbersome. This book was not written for an audience. This book was written for the author. The author understands everything about the world building. When she's referring to the various unions and the stellariums and the star signs that make up those unions, she knows about all of those factions and their politics. We, the readers, we don't. Look, it is easy for you to get wrapped up in your world building and to care more about that than anything else. But if you want your audience to care about your world building, you need to get them to care about your story first. She wants to do 4 months of editing to put this book back together, but I think it's gonna need a lot more than that. And her current solution of hiring a copy editor out of her audience, I don't think it's the play that's going to save this narrative. Oof, that was a rough read, but unfortunately, there is still more I have to cover. Audra Winter, her judgment on Critical Failure's side quest will be this Friday, so subscribe if you're looking forward to it. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed and you watched the whole thing, then leave the comment, "Assiduous is barren territory," to let me know you were loyal to the tavern and made it all the way to the end of the video. Don't bother trying to spell assiduous right. I read the frickin' book and I couldn't do it. In any case, if you guys want to see more of our content, then you might enjoy this past episode of Crispy's Tavern, where we covered some other book talk drama. That time we were covering authors who had a habit of race swapping. It was interesting. It's linked in the cards. Before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content when it comes out. And finally, if you want to get access to our exclusive Discord server, which has a writers group in it, by the way, so we can help you with your writing, our Patreon is linked up in the cards and in the description. Subscribe to our Patreon to directly support our channel. In essence, like how subscribe support. I will see you all next time. Farewell. Try not to focus too much on the author herself.